Check, test, 1, 2, 3. Check, test, 1, 2, 3. Ha. Let's see. Okay. Got a couple dozen folks in chat. Can you hear me? Testing, 1, 2, 3. Actually, hold it. Let me try this again. Okay. Oh, golly. Refresh your browsers. Oh, goodness. All right. Well, don't want to delay this too much longer. We are in pre-show, but we're going to bring in our special guest today. And let's see. We can remember where we put him. We got him here somewhere. Martin, are you there?
Hello, yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. All right. Well, somebody says that we don't start for another hour, but I think they're wrong. I hope they're wrong because we're starting soon. Well, we've got 30 folks in chat. If you're by the way, folks, if you're watching us on Facebook or Twitter or Periscope today, you want to come on over to easternshorebroadcasting.com because that's where the chat is. And the chat looks like that, and there are lots of folks there that would love to chat with you. If you're watching, especially if you're watching us on Facebook, we're not going to be monitoring the comments. You need to come to easternshorebroadcasting.com because that's where you're going to get in with the stuff that's going on. If you're in the chat room, one of the folks in the chat room, Florida Man, is Martin. Martin is in Florida, USA.
Florida Man.
And we can tell that he's getting a little South Florida suntan there, or at least the best as those. Do y'all get tan in Australia? Is that kind of like the water that it goes the different way? When you go out in the sun, do you get whiter and whiter?
No, yeah, we've got a big hole in the ozone layer above Australia, so we get sunburnt. It's funny because Americans will come to Australia and they'll hang out in the sun the same as they do in, say, their hometown and wonder why they get sunburnt so easily.
Oh, really?
We actually get burnt quicker and more intensely in Australia because of the ozone layer hole. So,
really? Oh, my goodness. I didn't know that. Amazing. Okay. Well, in the area that you live in eastern Australia, right?
Yeah.
Is probably akin to Orlando in the U.S.
Yeah, Orlando with a beach is how I would
Orlando
describe.
with a beach. Oh, wow.
Describe the Gold Coast, yeah. Or it's sort of Gold Coast is a mix of all of the touristy cities in Florida. You know, like a bit of Miami and the theme parks from Orlando, and we have a lot of suburbs named after cities in Florida. We have a suburb called Palm Beach. We have a suburb called Miami. We've got one called Florida Gardens. Yeah, so when they were planning our city, somebody must have liked Florida.
Well, that's okay. I guess you could emulate worse things. Is there gambling in Australia?
There are a couple of
Legal?
casinos. And the interesting thing about Australia is we have pokie machines in every surf club. So every pub pretty much has pokie machines in Australia. So
What's a pokey machine?
What do you call,
A slot machine?
Slot machine, yes.
Slot machines, okay.
Yeah, they're called pokies in Australia.
Okay, all right. Very good. Now, how old do you have to be in Australia to get a driver's license?
I don't even know, like 16, I think.
16, okay.
16 and a half, I think you can get your learner's permit.
Okay.
we have to be accompanied by a driver, and then you get your
Right.
provisional license around 17 and a half, I think.
Wow. Wow. And at what age is there an age that you're allowed to drink alcohol?
Yeah, 18 in Australia.
18. Okay. And the age to vote?
Is 18, yeah.
18.
So we have
Okay.
all that sort of become an adult is 18.
Okay.
Gambling, drinking, and voting all when you turn 18, yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Cool. Very cool. Well, now we know more about Australia than we did before. And those of you in the chat room may be wondering, what a coincidence that Martin and I both have the same last name. And I've been doing an extensive study of our past generations. No, I'm teasing. I haven't really, but I keep meaning to. What we ought to do is do one of those DNA things, where they can tell you how much of your DNA might be the same and pinpoint where it came from. I mean, I can pinpoint my Sinclair line back to Scotland very clearly. 3 generations. But I suspect yours may be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, I think it's not. Yeah, but a funny story at Streaming Media West. A guy came by the booth by the name of Mike Sinclair, and I think I've met him before in the past. And he has all these fascinating stories about the Sinclair clan and stuff like that. So I met another Sinclair. And he says there's a lot of information on those ancestry websites. Maybe I should check it out and see where it is. But I'm sure it's only about 3 to 4 generations or 5 generations maybe that I probably can find a common ancestor. I'm sure of it.
My parents went to Scotland several years ago to try to find my dad's family. And what we found out was that at least our little branch of the Sinclair family were the swindlers and the con men and the thieves.
Well, that's what my dad found out too. He went to Scotland and he said that the Sinclair clan were like the rejects that everybody didn't like.
Yep.
So yeah, maybe we have the same. Maybe he found the same family as you did.
It may have been. We may be closer than 19th cousins, which is what I'm pinning it at. Okay. A word to folks in the chat room that we're going to be taking questions about midway through the show. And so you're welcome to ask them now, but in fact, you may want to go ahead and just ask them now, because that'll help other people think about questions too. But when the time comes for questions, you may want to go back and cut and paste those and pop them back into chat too, so that they're right there where we can see them. Because I don't know about Martin, but unless you guys shout at me in all caps, I really don't pay attention to the chat room except for John's wife. She's the only one I really pay attention to in the chat room. And John is the one that alerted me last week that I had no audio, or at least he tried to. Actually, I think he laughed at me more than anything else, Martin, and it was the laughter that finally cued me in that I had no audio. All right, looks like we've got some great folks in the chat room. Dano's here, Guido's here, Bill from Texas is here, Giles is Step Back in Time TV, Paul from Great Britain, Tommy Willis from right up the road here in Alabama. Prashana is in Nepal, and so it's 1:30 in the morning or something like that there. Dave and Jerry. Jeff Peacock is right across the bay from me in Mobile. Texas Mike, Matthew, you're Florida man. Dave 8 Live TV. Merle Nixon's up in Indiana. Daily News Mysteries. Guest 422, who I think is Martin K. Guest 924. See, sometimes when the guests do a number, it has kind of a significant meaning. Like one of the guests comes on and he's always guessed 180. That is, he's going to do a complete turnaround. And 422, of course, is Martin, because those are the video numbers, the 422. 934, I have no clue what the significance of 934 is. Martin Stuckey's here. Sasha's here. SU Fan, welcome. I haven't seen you in the chat before. Glad to have you. Jeff Main, John, of course, Rudy, Boris, the wife. So we have our token lady today. Welcome. Oh, Kent's here. Pi Engineering, of course, is Dan. And Dan was with you just what, last week before, from PI Engineering. Sandra's here from Norway. Todd Wolf, and guest 368. So it looks like a pretty good group. The rule is, of course, you have to behave, number one. If you don't, you get... And the second rule is if you arrive late, and of course everybody that's already here is not late, but if you arrive late during the show, you have to bring refreshments to the post-show. We'll give you some ideas of what would be suitable refreshments to bring. Mixed nuts seems to be a popular one, which definitely goes along with the theme of the show. Doggy is here. Salvador is here. TC is here. Didn't see TC on the list. Let's see who else might have slipped in here. The only thing I don't like about Chatwing, Martin, well, there are a couple things, but is that the list of participants seems to reshuffle itself periodically for no good reason. At least on my end it does. Chris Watts is here. Mike Lotta's here. Let's see who else has stepped in. If I've missed you, I apologize. But we want everybody to get a warm welcome. Martin K is here officially down at the end. Lens 56, welcome. We have good crossover with photography folks, it seems. Somebody was asking in the chat a little while ago, what's the minimum age to use vMix? You know, that would be fun to see who has used vMix with a child and what's the youngest age at which a child is able to operate it. Giles says that we're fruits and nuts to bring to to the post-show party. Okay. Looks like we've got enough folks here to have a show. All right.
Oh yeah, so many people in your chat room.
Yeah, well, about half of them are paid, so don't become impressed. That's a big thing in the U.S. You know, to pay people to show up to look like you have a crowd. We had a politician that did that rather recently.
Yes.
All right. So we're going to gear up for the we're still in pre-show right now, folks. So Dan says his check bounced. So, well, Dan, you can hang up right now. And Tommy wants to know if it's physical age or mental age. Well, Tommy, we know about you and the mental problems, but that's okay. What I'm thinking about is, you know, what's the youngest child that we've ever had operate vMix? That would be really cool. I'd love to do a show on, you know, putting a 5-year-old in front of vMix and letting them play with it and see what they could do. And then put the same 5-year-old in front of a TriCaster or a Wirecast and see how they did. Oh, sorry. All right, let's mute Martin for a moment. Martin, we're going to mute you. And we're going to fade to black. And we're going to do some other stuff. I think I've got it worked out from last week. So bear with me here, and we'll be right back. Hello and welcome. I'm Tom Sinclair, and I am delighted that you are here for Streaming Idiots. We have got I would say we have a power-packed show today, but then that would give away the fact that I'm not the only one on the show. No, we're delighted. We've got Martin Sinclair waiting in the green room, the virtual green room, as it were. who's going to be our guest today. And if you're watching us live, number one, I want to welcome all the folks that are watching us live, especially folks watching us on Twitter or Facebook or Periscope. Come on over to easternshorебroadcasting.com, because that's where the chat is, and you can ask questions and comment on the show as it goes on. Make fun of me, whatever you want. But that's going to be, if you're watching us on one of the other services that has a chat or comment function, we're not going to see those until well after the show. So come on over to easternshorебroadcasting.com. We'd love to have you. Also want to give a shout out to all the folks that are watching on YouTube after the fact, because we're going to post this on YouTube after the show. And a number of you from last week took me up on my invitation to subscribe. So I want to give a shout out to Jebba DJ, to Curtis, to Tron X, to Christ Broadcasting Television Network, to Radio Irma, to PME PMI TV, to Fiat Ministry Network, to Alderman Farms, Samir, Suzette, Joseph, Therac Club, Jorge, and Goyas. So thank you for subscribing. And now you're going to be annoyed every time we post a new video, so that you get to see all the crazy things we're up to. So if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. And you can actually go to Eastern Shore Broadcasting. It might be easier. You can find the Facebook link there. You can find the YouTube link there. You can find the Twitter link there, and kind of follow us on all that stuff. And that way you kind of know that, for example, next week we're not going to be doing our regular show on Wednesday, because Wednesday's the day before Thanksgiving here in the U.S., so I'll be traveling to visit family. But we're actually doing a co-joined show with the folks at This and That. So we're going to be going across the pond to Giles and to John, and then to Merle and to Martin, and having a co-joined show between This and That and Streaming Idiots, and that's next Monday at 3 o'clock Eastern, I think. So watch Facebook and Twitter and our website for the exact time and day. But I think that's what it's going to be. That's really going to be fun. If you haven't already, too, on our website, sign up for the email link, because we just sent out a flock of emails yesterday about our this Friday, Black Friday special. So can't tell you what it is, but I know if you send us your email, we'll send you that. It's going to be, I can't say it. I'm forbidden from saying it. It's going to be a deal on something that you'd love to have. So how about that? Otherwise, see, these manufacturers, they wrap me up in all this wording, and they don't allow me to say when I'm doing a discount on one of their products. So shh, don't say anything. Anyway, it's going to be really, really cool. So I want to welcome everybody that's watching live, everybody that's watching on YouTube. About 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, when I was using VidBlaster for all my shows, and loving it. For me, it was the latest, greatest thing. And of course, it was my first love. It was the first software I'd ever seen. Somebody suggested that I take a look at Wirecast, and somebody else suggested I take a look at vMix. And I looked at them, and I'm an intuitive guy, and I don't like reading directions, so I started playing around with both of them, and I gave up in 5 minutes. Couldn't figure it out. It was nothing was what I expected from VidBlaster. And then about a year or so later, VidBlaster was having some difficulties, and somebody said, Tom, take another look at vMix. Take another look at Wirecast. So I looked at Wirecast again, and it was like, wow, now that I understand a little bit more, this is really good. It has a great encoder. So I actually used Wirecast to do the encoder on my That VidBlaster Guy shows, using VidBlaster as the production PC, or as the production, Wirecast as the encoder, all on the same PC. Remember, one guy, one PC, one awesome broadcast. And then somebody else said, well, Tom, take a look at vMix again. So I forced myself, I held a gun to my own head and forced myself to look at vMix. And it was like, wow, I've missed all of this. And I dug into it, and I started I started substituting vMix on my VidBlaster show, and I would use vMix to actually produce the VidBlaster show until somebody caught me and spanked my hand and said, "Tom, you're not being straight with us." And it was at that point that I realized, I had to leave my first love because I had found a love that was better and more beautiful and more powerful and stronger and newer and more exciting. And I'm still married to the same woman. If anybody's worried about that, I'm still married to the same woman. Next May we'll celebrate 37, 38 years, something like that. But so I haven't left my true first love. But in terms of live production software, I have become a vMix. I was going to say a vMix aficionado, but I was joking with Martin in the pre-show that I'm really not. I only know about 20% of it, but fortunately, it's that 20% that allows me to do 80% of what I need to do. So, with that little introduction, let me cut straight to the chase and bring in Martin Sinclair to the show, who has waited so patiently. Martin, I'm delighted to have you with us, and welcome.
Thanks, Tom. It's great to be back on your show. I don't know, when was I last on Streaming Idiots? Do you remember? Was it last year?
Well, I was on your show for Streaming Idiots back in April at NAB, and that was
yes.
Absolutely a riot. That was wonderful. But before that, I think it's almost been exactly a year. Seems to me it was November. I'd have to go check. And I was so stupid back then. Not that I'm much brighter now, but I was so stupid back then. I didn't even have good questions. I was like, well, let's see. What? But, Martin, it has been a wonderful ride with vMix. And I just want, before we go any further, I just want to thank you for doing such a great job on this software, and not just doing a good job to begin with and sort of stopping there, but continuing to refine it and to make it great and to make it do great and wonderful things. I got to turn my phone off. Sorry about that. I should know better by this point. So thanks. Good work. Good work. Keep it up.
Yeah,
I mean,
thanks,
no pressure.
No, it's all about customers and resellers like you guys that give us feedback. That's what's been driving all of the progress in vMix, is hearing all of the amazing ideas that you guys suggest to us on a weekly basis. And Tom, just before the show, had a couple of suggestions that have already got me thinking about, well, how can I solve that problem? Or how can I make it easier, is usually the question I ask myself when a customer brings a feature request to us. How can we make their lives easier in live production?
Mm-hmm. I've looked at some very mature software products, like things that Adobe produces, and I go, I could never learn all of that. But the people that started out, in 1.0 and now they're at 28.0 or whatever, they just grew up with it. And so the trick is to keep it so that a newbie, because our field is a growing field. I still believe that we are at the very front edge of the bell curve, and that more and more people are going to come into live streaming because they're going into it with their phone. They're going into it with Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or whatever the platforms are, and they're not being satisfied because they can't do lower thirds and they can't do graphics or any of those things. By the way, I left my lower third on. You should think I would know better than that at this point. But Martin, tell us, we got to get this off the table before people start asking. There is a beta of vMix that is out right now. When does this beta become no longer a beta?
Yeah, so vMix 18 beta is out. It's up to version 0.53. What we do with the beta, we've already tested it. We probably did about 2 or maybe 3 live shows ourselves on the 18 before we released it to the public. So we know that 99% of it is robust and reliable. It's that other 1%, the unexpected, that we need to send it out there into the world, and people try it on thousands of different PCs and configurations, and they start reporting it to us on the forums. So if people want to try 18, first of all, they can go to forums.vmix.com and try it out. And if they come across a bug, let us know. So it's up to 5.3. And then I'm currently working on 5.4. I've already got a couple of bug fixes to add onto 5.4. Just waiting on something to come through, hopefully in the next day or so. It'll allow me to release that. I'm hoping 5.4 is our final beta, or what they call, in other software world, release candidate. What this version is what we hope to release to the public as the final version. So I hope to have that by the end of the week. And if there are no bugs that come through in the next few days after that, we can release that to the public, and that'll be the final version of vMix 18. So hopefully that's the timeline. So yeah, everybody get out there and try .5.3. Get your bug reports in, and 5.4, look out for that by the end of the week.
Cool. We're using 5.3. Now, of course, I got chastised by Tim a while back. This is 18.0.0.53, not .53. And so we're using that here in our production, and then we're also using it on our laptop to do the streaming and recording. So it's we're
well, I think it's fine
18.
To abbreviate the versions now. I say .53, .54. The version numbering system, the way it is that way is just how it's done in the way that the software's built. You have 4 version numbers. You have the major, you have the minor version, and I don't even know what the third one is, and the final one is revision. So the final number gets updated usually by 1 each time something's fixed or changed, and then we put the software together and then test it out. So that's why the versions are the way they are. I just update the last number each time I have a new version released. And for those out there that know, sometimes there's a gap in the numbers. Well, that means I put it all together and I thought this version is going to be ready for release. And then I give it to a couple of people in our office, and they say, oh, something's wrong here. And I go, oh, I have to fix that. And then I update the number again. So put it this way, whenever the vMix software leaves my computer, leaves my development computer and goes to somebody else, that's when I update the number. 5.4 means I haven't given anything but the 5.3 out to anybody else just yet, and hope to have it out there on the forums by Friday. That is all to say, skip the 2 numbers. If you say 18.53, we will know what you're talking about. Everybody else will know what you're talking about. Just skip those 2 zeros. They don't mean anything. I don't expect to use them in the future.
All right. Well, now we've got that.
Internet, so it broke up.
Looks like everybody in the chat room is offline too. We were having problems with YouTube earlier, so let's check. So we'll just sort of go to
saying
the
it's
side.
back now. Okay, so it wasn't my hotel for once.
No. But were you hearing me consistently?
After I gave my response, and then you asked another question, I didn't hear any of that.
All right. Giles wants us to repeat the last 20 minutes. It's not happening. So version 18 comes out. What about the folks that are on version 16 or 15 or 14? How are they going to, and they've had vMix for years, and they're going to have to pay, another 50% or 75% of the value to upgrade, right?
Well, they can log into our website and find out if they get a free upgrade. In most cases, they'll be surprised that they can get a free upgrade. Those that can't get a free upgrade, it's $60. So.
$60? Oh my goodness. That's unreasonable. That's too low.
So, I mean...
So somebody that has vMix 12 and they've been using it all along out on an island somewhere, they can now upgrade to the latest, greatest, every toy you've got in your arsenal of toys for $60. That's
Yeah, if they're
amazing.
using vMix version 6 from back in 2009, they can upgrade to 18 or 17 for $60.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's very generous. You're a nice guy. I mean, no matter what Tim says about you and what Kimberly says about you in private, you're a really nice guy.
Well, doing things that customers like is good business. So I never really understood why some companies out there do all these things that make customers angry. I mean, that's sort of not helping them out. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've got loyal customers. There's no doubt about that. They're fussing at me here in the chat room. Be quiet, Tom. Don't encourage him to raise the prices. That's right. That's right. Well, now we're going to take questions from folks in chat in just a minute, and some folks have emailed me some questions that I want to pepper you with too. But I want to kind of give you a blue sky question here, and so let's say that you and I are sitting on a dock on the bay, watching the tide roll away, and that'd make a good song. And we're just talking about the future and great things that are going to happen in the world, and maybe talking about some stories from the past of ideas of things that have happened that have given you ideas for what to do with VidBlaster. Do any of those kind of pop up, a story that you'd like to share that turned into a great VidBlaster feature, or an encounter that you had with some folks that made you think about, taking your software a different direction than you already were?
Well, I will say what is interesting is Tim, my colleague, brought me onto this podcast where these companies in Silicon Valley talk about how they became successful and how they became these multi-million, billion-dollar pieces of software. And what was fascinating is that the key thing with a lot of them is that they didn't plan to be a big success. It just sort of happened. Circumstances, right place, right time. They became really successful software, and some massive company bought them out, and that's sort of how it all works in Silicon Valley. And I would say in a certain sense, the vMix story is the same. I didn't build vMix expecting it to be this software that was going to be a key part of, what people use now that streaming is so popular. The very first version of vMix I built was for my own church, just because I was, as a hobby, I was saying, can I do this? Just as a video switcher. Didn't even have streaming capabilities at the time. I was just saying, can I make a video switcher that can do recording to save me time from getting all the video tapes. This is how long ago it was, all the video tapes out of the cameras, putting them into the video editor and cutting a Christmas Carols production. I wanted to save time, record it and switch it live. And that was really the whole catalyst of vMix. That was back around 2005. I believe 2005, we borrowed a switcher. And I thought, okay, let's see if I can do this on the PC. And maybe it was 2006, the year later, vMix version 1 was used to switch the production, 3 SD cameras, all connected via USB. Maybe there was a capture card in there in the mix. And then, it was mainly USB, mainly capture cards, mainly done in SD, and it was recorded to DV AVI format. For those that remember, back in the day, that was the latest and greatest video editing format for cameras. So I made that the recording format in vMix. So each year I just kept adding on features to vMix. And one of the main things when we weren't doing a Christmas Carols production in the church was just to put up video clips on the screen, as the pastor was, wanted a video clip to demonstrate a point or something. They would give the video clip at the start of the service, and vMix was designed for just throwing up video clips and graphics and PowerPoint during a sermon. And so based on that, I actually designed vMix to be dumbed down, because the operators or the volunteers in the church weren't that experienced in technical side of things. We had some really great people in a church that were really knowledgeable, but they were mainly responsible for audio and and for all these other things. So then we had to get whoever was willing to be a volunteer to operate the video system, the playback graphics system. And so I made vMix just a point and click. And that's the story of the quick play button. Wanted to create a button that volunteer operators could just point to a video clip in the vMix down the input row and then click quick play. And they would know if they pressed that button, the video clip would be queued up and sent out. So that's really what vMix was for many, many years there, from 2006 all the way up to 2009. And I didn't feel confident enough to release it to the public. It was just a hobby, just something I was playing around with. Until people started saying, hey, you should really start seeing if you can sell this. And I took their advice. 2009, I released the beta out into the world to see, well, what do you guys think of it? And I guess the rest, as they say, is history. That was when the website went up in 2009. And it was really just feedback from customers. They'll go, okay, this is a good start, but we need this, we need that. I go, okay, I'll add that in. Adobe Flash Media Live Encoder was released in 2009 as well. So I thought, okay, let's make sure that it can send video to the Flash Media Live Encoder. That way it became streaming software, not just a recording software, and just kept adding on and on to it. So it's you know, it's one of those stories that I didn't plan. I'm going to make this software and it's going to be a huge success and we're going to drive the streaming revolution. None of that, just I'm playing around with this software to help my church out, and somewhere along the way it became a product. So there you have it.
So that's all there was to it. No problem.
That's right. And it's just interesting, you know, you see a lot of companies out there, they start out going, this is the market we're going to go into, and this is the product, and this is how it's going to go. And they don't seem to get a lot of success that way. It seems the really successful companies, at least in my experience, the ones that are sort of, you know, it just happened. It was totally accidental. So I'm really fortunate, you know, that vMix has become as popular as it has, because I really didn't plan it to be that way. So yeah.
You were in the right place at the right time with the right skill set. Yep. Yep. And one would say, if one had an image that went beyond this world, one would say that maybe there was some destiny involved, or a higher purpose. Well, that's right. You said it started in your church, so I guess there's a higher purpose right there. That's outstanding.
Yeah, and I've sort of been mindful over the years to make sure that I never lose sight of that original purpose of making this software that's easy to use for churches, because that was the original thinking in mind. And so always try to make sure that is, you know, and churches have become, as a result of that, probably one of our largest customers of vMix. Because they're in the same situation I was. Only have volunteers that aren't experienced switcher operators. So you need software more designed for somebody that's new to production, rather than somebody that's been running TV stations for the past 30 years. Yep. That's what I hope to always keep in mind, that you know, make sure it works well for the beginners and the first-time users in streaming.
That is a big challenge, to make it have lots of richness in features, to do lots of great things, but also to make it simple so that somebody like me can sit down with 20% knowledge and do 80% of what we need to do. Actually, I'm probably, you know, truth be told, I'm probably up to about 22% now. So I can do much more than I ever could before. How about some questions?
I'm probably about 30 to 40%. Because people come by our booths when we do the trade shows and they go, oh, so I had this question about this feature. And I go, well, what's that? You know, are you sure you're talking about vMix? And they'll point it out and go, yeah, this feature over there. Oh, that feature I added in 2010.
Right.
There's so many features. I lose track of half of them.
Well, and it really is, as somebody that does a one-man show, it's very inspiring and slightly humorous to me to watch you and Tim do the show. And I'm saying, yes, I feel their pain. I understand. You know, that it seems so simple going in, and then all of a sudden the camera's on you, and you've got to do all this stuff with your hands without everybody doing it. That's why I named this show Streaming Idiots, so I could get away with anything right off the bat. You know, nobody has a high expectation of this show. All right, well, you ready for some questions?
Sure.
Okay, if you're in the chat room, this is your cue to write questions, but I've got some questions already. And somebody has written, and I apologize, I didn't write down who wrote me these questions. So if this is your question, you can cheer quietly in the background. Martin, will you be able to make a change, or I guess it was an added feature, I'll let you decide how to take it, so that vMix can stream to more than 3 destinations? Currently, you can only stream, using one copy of vMix on one PC, you can only stream to 3 destinations at the same time.
Yeah, well, it's one of those, you know, that saying, with great power comes great responsibility. My personal opinion is that
this is a no, folks.
3 destinations seems to be the good sweet spot of, you know, most people are going to have enough bandwidth to be able to do 3. Most of them are going to have enough CPU or graphics power to do 3. Any more than that, and you'll get the situation, I think, where a lot of very excited, you know, vMix users go, oh great, I'm going to stream to this provider, and they're just going to go off the list, and they're just going to keep filling the list with all of their providers, and then they're going to click start, and then their internet's going to explode. So I think those providers out there, you know, such as Joycaster, I've forgotten what the new name is.
Switchboard Live.
Switchboard Live, yes, thank you, are the key to all of that. That way vMix can stream one stream to them, and they can distribute it to every destination you could possibly think of. But that said as well, customers don't have to do it this way, but my recommendation is to stick to one platform or 2 maybe, so that you can encourage your audience to come visit you in one place. That way you can have a chat room, you know, you can have the audience engagement. If you start streaming everywhere, some are on Facebook, some are over here, some are on there, I mean, that's great to get new people into the live show, but I think you want to draw them to one particular streaming destination just on a practical level anyway. But I understand the excitement of, there's all these streaming providers, why pick one? I can just have them all. And, you know, that's my thinking anyway. So it does 3. It's not a technical limitation. I could expand it to more, but I just worry that users may bite off more than they can chew and end up getting stuck with more than 3 destinations. So that's
You're
why
saving us from ourselves.
Yeah, there's other streaming providers out there that their job is to distribute to as many destinations as you like. So I think, why not leave it up to them, the experts in that field, to take it over? And I believe their plans are really affordable. And anyway, so you know, you could. I would encourage users who want to do more than 3 to check them out.
I could also do multiple instances of vMix on the same PC and do it that way, though, couldn't I?
Well, not on the same PC. There's some audio limitations there. Okay. Basically, if you run more than one vMix on the PC, the audio mix, there's only one audio mix across all of them. So you're going to have the audio headbutting each other, and it might work, sometimes it might not. The recommended way, if you want to do more than 3 and you have to for a particular application and don't want to stream it to a distribution service, then you can run a separate computer with a laptop. Mid-range laptop would be fine, and use NDI. And you could do that for as many laptops as destinations as you like. So that's what Tom's doing right now.
Yep. Okay. All right. I told you that was a no. I knew there was a no answer in there. That's okay. And that's one of the things I love about what you're doing with vMix, Martin, is you're saying, yes, we can do this, 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 and this. And no, we're not going to do this. Maybe we can't. Maybe we can, but we don't think this is where we want to position our product. And, you know, stick by your guns. Don't let people like me sway you, at least not too much. Let's see. Do you have any update There's been a lot of discussion of the X99 motherboards and how they're suffering some flaws or problems, and it's happening not just with vMix, but folks are discovering with Wirecast too. Is there any new news in that area with the X99s?
Um, no, just a lot of speculation still at this stage. Um, in summary, for those that aren't familiar, the X99 is a motherboard by Intel. It is their high-end, high-performance motherboard chipset. So when you get their 6-core and 8-core processors, their Xeons and so on, they all have a X99 chipset. So we built a system based on this for our 4K show, because on paper, according to the specifications, it has plenty more PCI Express lanes, has plenty of bandwidth, and that's what 4K needs. For all those cameras you're throwing around, you need lots of bandwidth, and it seemed to be the right solution for that. But we found for some reason we're running into a bottleneck, and a bottleneck was even sooner than we did on the standard mainstream PC. For those that know the Z170 architecture, we're actually getting better performance on that on a 4-core processor than we were on a 6-core processor with the X99. And so I thought, oh no, well, what's wrong? What have I done in vMix? My first thing is, what's vMix doing that's causing this bottleneck to be reached? And I researched online, and there's a lot of reports out there for professional audio users. Those that use audio interfaces with ASIO, and they run them into the system, and they use things like Pro Tools and other professional audio software to record bands in a studio setting. This is a huge industry. It's even much larger than the entire streaming video production industry, this professional audio live production industry. And there were lots of reports, hey, the X99 was causing crackles and audio dropouts. And my first instinct was, oh, okay, that's a little bit of a relief. At least I know I'm not alone. At least this is a problem that's bigger than vMix. That way I can start researching and seeing if people came with any solutions to it. And so far, I don't think anybody has pinpointed the causes. There's a lot of forum posts out there. And in fact, one of our users in our forums, if you look through hardware compatibility forums, went through a big list of all the things they tried, all of these different software, give vMix a high priority, give their audio a higher priority, all these sorts of things. They were mainly to focus on the audio crackle and the audio dropout problems that some users were having. But I don't think anybody's really pinpointed the cause. People are just trying all sorts of things, and for a while, it seems to make things a bit more stable. So I know it's not an answer at this stage. We haven't got an update just of yet. That was where I left it before I left Australia. I came over here to the States to do trade shows and things like that. When I get back to Australia at the end of this year, I'll be looking at it again and trying everything I could possibly think of to get a solution out there. The 3 things that it could be, in summary, are Windows 10 bug. So I'm going to try Windows 8.1 and Windows 7 and see if they're different. The next one is possibly an NVIDIA bug. I think this might be closer to the mark because we were having some problems with audio crackling that was only with the NVIDIA audio output. We tried the sound card output and it didn't have the crackling. So that makes me think, also as well, when playing back video clips on the NVIDIA graphics card, they would start breaking up in the images and even in media player. So that makes me think, okay, maybe there's something there with NVIDIA. The third one that I've heard some reports about as well is the X99 has a hardware bug in it. And there've been a lot of attempts to work it around, but no one's admitted that that's a problem just yet because that would require replacing the hardware. So I hope it's not the last one. I hope it's something simple out of the first 2, either a Windows 10 fix or an NVIDIA fix that will solve it. But I'm going to dig into that when I get back, and I hope we find a solution. My recommendation is, for now, if those are building systems, to try the Z170, the 4 gigahertz processor, 6700K. This is what we recommend on our website under the reference systems as the Ruby system. So have a look at that if you wanted to do high-end production. That's the same specifications we did for our 4K show. We just split it into two of those systems. We had one that was using NDI to record and stream, and one just doing the switching. And I'm just seeing in the chat room now that there's a user out there that's saying X99 is working okay for them. And that's the really frustrating part as well. I have had a lot of users come to me and say, I've got X99 and it's all working great. And that has me baffled. Why? Why is it working okay for them and not for others?
Right.
There's going to be some really simple solution that we're all going to, hit ourselves going, oh, why didn't we think of that?
Right.
But for now, I'm a little bit stumped. And yeah, someone's saying in the chat room, it's to do with X99. It's not specifically to do with vMix. See, vMix, especially if you're doing 4K and you're doing a lot of inputs, vMix takes advantage of everything the computer is capable of. It's CPU, GPU, it uses everything. So if you're doing a really powerful production, you're going to have that system run to its limits. When you run a computer to its limits, the audio is the first thing that can start cutting out. It's the first thing you notice. It's harder to notice frame drops here and there, but you hear the crackles. They're very obvious. And that's how you can know something's not quite right. So that's what I think is happening. My personal thinking at the moment is that the X99 has got some performance bottleneck, and therefore people are noticing it much sooner on it than they are with the Z170. And once I solve that bottleneck, it'll be, smooth sailing from there. And that's an important thing as well to realize, is that the CPU usage monitor, particularly with processors that have hyperthreading, can be a bit deceptive. If you look at Task Manager with hyperthreading, and you've got a 4-core processor, the high-end ones will show up as 8 cores. If you have a 6-core, they'll show up as 12. And you'll have a look at the Task Manager, and it'll be about 40-50%. You go, oh, I've got 50% of CPU left over. Not always the case because of how hyperthreading works. You may actually be closer to 80% and just don't realize it until it's too late. So there's all those sort of things I'm, experimenting with, and I hope to have an answer for people as soon as I work it out. So don't worry out there. If you're worrying about it, I will let you guys know as soon as I have a solution. I will shout it from the rooftops. I will be very happy to get that solution out to you guys as soon as I know what's happening.
Nothing like something that works sometimes and doesn't work other times. Yep. I hear you. Interesting question came out of the chat room just now about shortcuts. And are you going to enable the ability to use a control plus another key for a shortcut? Is that currently available?
It's not currently available, no.
Okay. I've never tried it.
There are a couple of shortcuts that we've used for the instant replay, where if you hold down the control or shift key, the scroll wheel in your mouse becomes a slow motion control and little things like that. But we haven't made them available for just general shortcuts as of yet. But it's an interesting feature request, although I would just say, MIDI controllers, they're so cheap on Amazon. X-Keys MIDI controllers, so many different control options out there. Buy a controller, and then you'll have more buttons than you need control shift combinations to use. That's the main reason why people have those controls, because you see in like Premiere Pro, the reason is they've run out of keys. Well, with vMix, just add a bigger controller and you're all set.
Cool. Good answer. Let's see. Somebody else said, and this is a trigger question. So this is where I go from the shallow end of the pool to the deep end of the pool pretty quickly here. Can we have a trigger that fades the audio input, or fades the audio on an in or fades it out going out and fades it in going in? A trigger that will fade audio.
I thought about this. It has been a feature request in the past. At the moment, if you mute or unmute an audio source, it actually does a really, really fast fade. It's not a hard cut.
Okay.
So make sure that any sudden abrupt click noises or whatever when you turn on or off audio don't happen. So the current thinking at this moment, maybe we should make an option to be able to change that. So instead of a really fast fade in or fade out, they can customize it from 0 to 100, 200, 1,000 milliseconds. So maybe that's the solution to the problem, because when you start doing triggers to activate something that takes some time to complete, you activate that trigger and then you go, oh, I need to go to this camera. And when you switch to that camera, the audio is still fading down, it's still fading up. You go, oh no, my audio is all out of whack. So that's the reason why I'm sort of hesitant to have triggers that do something that happens well after the trigger has been triggered. So I think maybe allowing people to adjust the automatic fast fade in or fade out of the audio may be a solution. Maybe that's what they're looking for. They just want a longer audio fade out anytime they move between video clips and things like that. So yeah, that's what I'm currently at the moment. It's not something we're looking at for 18, but possibly vMix 19 next year.
All right, there you go. There you go. Let's see. There was this is one. I like this. This is Boris. Boris is asking for a feature request. That is, when we close an input, to either have the input locked where we can't close it, or I've seen somebody else suggest that we have a little dialog box pop up to say, do you really want to close this input? And I poo-pooed that until yesterday when I was doing something and I said, oh, I need to minimize this input. You know how you can right click in the top border of the input and it makes it small. And so I very carefully closed out the input, and I was like, oh man. And it was an input that had a lot of multi-view stuff attached to it, and it took me 10 minutes to recover it. But had I had I wouldn't have locked it. I wouldn't have been smart enough to lock it. But had there been a dialog box that popped up and said, are you sure you want to do this? Well, I probably would have said yes to that too. But nevertheless, the feature request is, can you protect dummies like me, please?
So there's a few options there. The first is the padlock in the bottom right-hand corner of vMix that will lock the input so you can't close them. So that is it's designed to protect all of the things you may not want to do in the middle of a show. So when that padlock's on, you can't stop recordings, can't stop streams, things like that, but you can start them. So it's designed for, I forgot to start the recording. Well, at least I can do that in padlock mode, but I can't stop it. I can't cut myself off. I can't close inputs. I can't do things like that. So that's the lock. That's the padlock. That's the first option that people have. The second one is if you accidentally close an input, most of the time you can click the last button up the top left corner next to preset, and that will go and load things back to where they were 30 seconds ago. So every 30 seconds, it updates the preset. So Tom's excited about that. So they're the two things. They're already in there that users may not know about. If people want a dialog box to prompt when they click the close button, that is something I can look at. If there's a consensus where a lot of users say, yes, we want that option, I can add it to the options in the settings, even make it a default if everybody agrees, hey, they want to be able to prompt before closing inputs.
Right.
But it's sort of the thing though, a lot of the stuff in vMix is based on my own testing, my own productions, but I'm interested in seeing how other people do their workflows. When I set up a production, I'm doing things quickly and furiously at the start of the show. I'm closing inputs, I'm adding them, I'm moving them around. Everything's all done fast paced, and I don't want a dialog box to pop up. And then when I start the show, I click the padlock and everything is locked into place. But maybe users want to be able to close inputs in the middle of the show and things like that. I wouldn't recommend it, but maybe they want to do it. And so having an extra bit of protection there would help them a lot. So
when I have guests that not you, of course, but when I have guests that drone on and on and on, I'm closing inputs and I'm adding inputs and I'm doing multi-views and I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. Keep going. No, I'm teasing, but okay. Definitely do that. Definitely. And for those of you that are watching, the vMix forum is a great place. The feature request section is a great place to, if you've got an idea for a new feature, it's a great place to go go suggest it. But before you do, go ahead and check and make sure nobody else has already suggested it, because Martin is probably, I'm guessing, is probably got his finger on the pulse of the feature request section. And he's got certain features that people have requested that he's watching to see how many people go in and do a +1 on. Because +1 is a way of raising your hand and saying, yeah, me too. And so if somebody makes a feature request and nobody responds to it, it gathers dust. But if there's a feature request and all of a sudden 50 people respond and say +1 or ++1, all of a sudden Martin's got an idea of what's a feature that's worth taking a look at and seeing, balance in time available versus the importance of that feature.
And the important thing to know at the moment as well is that we have to plan sort of feature requests now around 12 months down the track. So if you've put it in the feature requests and there's a lot of people +1ing, and then you see vMix 18 be released and it doesn't have your feature in it, don't lose heart. It's because the vMix 18 features were planned a long time ago. But smaller things like this, if there's a big consensus on them, usually they can be added in as one of those small updates. A perfect example of this is the total CPU meter in vMix 17. There was a post in the feature request. Everybody said, yes, we need the total CPU usage meter. I posted my 2 cents where it's like, well, CPU usage in Windows is different depending on how you monitor it. So this is not going to be the same as what Task Manager or your other program says, but I'll add it in anyway. And it became a feature that everybody really liked. So things like that can happen in between releases for small stuff like that as well.
Cool. Let's see. There was one other question. I like having the questions here in the chat room because I can pick the questions that I want to hear the answers to. So if your question doesn't get asked, it's not my. I mean, it is my fault. Oh, I know. Is there a way that you can protect me from doing anything stupid? And let me be more specific. On last week's show, I started the show. I didn't have any audio. I talked for, I don't know, maybe a minute, maybe 2. And people are shouting at me in the chat room in all caps, trying to grab my attention. And then my good friend Martin Kay sat down and wrote an app, well, basically modified an app that he was already using with NDI to monitor NDI, that basically was a small little app that just popped up at the top of the screen and went, I guess went green when you had audio and went red when you didn't. And the suggestion is that something like that could be built into vMix. And it might be as simple as simply changing the width of the audio volume meter right there in the middle next to the transition bar. So that it has more, so that it's easier to see. Don't know.
So yeah, well,
can you save me from myself?
Well, I'll show you I'll tell you what we do in our production. We use the Behringer UMC 404 audio interface. We've got the 2 microphones for me and Tim coming into that, and then they're coming into vMix. And we just set a trigger after the intro video to turn them on. Both of those mics on in the vMix audio mixer. So regardless of what we do and what we have muted, at least we know after the intro video, our audio is always going to be turned on. So you can use triggers to do things like that. Anytime you have a situation where, I keep forgetting to do this, a trigger can usually automate that so you don't ever have to worry about it. The other thing I do is always look when the show's starting, because even that's not enough for me. I know the trigger's in there. I know the audio is going to turn on. But when the show starts and one of us starts talking, I look at the middle of vMix and make sure the audio meter is moving. If it's not moving, it's panic mode time. So yeah, those 2 things are what I do in my own production. The triggers.
This is another really no answer, isn't it?
Well, no, but it's not a no answer. Everybody can get together and go, okay, we want the meter to be bigger, or we want an alert here, or we want that. If everybody can sort of get some kind of consensus happening on what it would look like, how it would work, it'd certainly be something we can add. For example, I personally didn't like the idea of, at the top of vMix, you have additional buttons that tell you when the external is on and then the recording's on and the stream's on. In my programming mind, I thought that was redundant. I thought, why would you have two things telling you that the recording is happening? But people really wanted it up there in the top, and so, okay, well, how do you want it laid out? And said, let's have it next to the full screen. And sure enough, we added that in a few versions ago. So it's not I would never say absolutely no, we're never going to have X, Y, or Z in vMix. It's more of a case of people coming together and reaching a consensus on how it should look and how it should work. Because usually when you start thinking about it more, it starts a debate. People want it this way, people want it that way. And it's sort of, it's stuck in committee, as it were. But sometimes people all agree it should be done this way. And that's sort of a signal to me, at least, looking at the feature request forum. Oh, they're all on the same page. They all want it this way. I should probably add it.
Okay. You're not going to save me from myself, I can tell. Next question. When will vMix adopt NDI version 2?
So there's NDI version 2. For those who don't know, New Tech announced it at IBC, I believe. They put out the press release for NDI version 2. They are working on it. It is in beta. We have been testing it. As soon as they give the go-ahead, we will release it out to the public. My guess is it will be in the final vMix 18 release. There's already improvements to NDI there in the current vMix 18 beta, so if you want to see what NDI version 2 is going to be like, you can try out the vMix 18 beta and try it out. But really, we're just waiting for the go-ahead to make it an official release in vMix. But yeah, for those who are interested in what's new in version 2, there's a bunch of things in there that are useful for those out there that are making other types of NDI software. But the really important one that I think for vMix users is CPU usage when adding the inputs is a lot reduced versus previous releases. So that means more NDI sources in your production on your same PC. And it also uses, because of the CPU, it does 4K better. So if you're planning to do NDI 4K, like we tried a month ago, vMix 18 is going to be what you want to use for that as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. The last is not a question, but it's just a request. And I'm sure a lot of folks would chime in and agree that that we want more tutorial videos. More.
Wow. Yeah. For those that have been on our YouTube channel, you'll notice that Tim has been uploading almost weekly tutorial videos. There's heaps there. If you haven't checked out our YouTube channel in a while, check it out again. You might be surprised what we have available in there. But yeah, Tim keeps putting out those videos. If there's a particular topic you would like to see, drop us an email or send us a message on Twitter. Twitter is how you get Tim's attention a lot of the time, so he's going to hate me for saying that, but send him a message on Twitter saying you want this demo video, and he'll make a note of it.
Yeah, Doggy is suggesting in the chat that Tim do a tutorial video on how to prevent from forgetting things.
Triggers, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Martin, we have been taking far too much of your time. You've been very gracious to stay so long with us. I know the guys and the gals in the chat room have just had a ball based on all the comments, and I haven't gotten to probably less than a third of the questions. Do you have a date for the December vMix Funtime live show?
I don't, but it'll probably be. I don't know, actually. That is, am I going to be back in Australia for it? Am I going to be over here?
Yeah.
It's usually middle of the month, middle to end of the month. So maybe we'll have a Christmas special of the vMix Funtime live show. But for those that were, we just did the live show, when was it? It was Monday.
Monday, this week, yeah.
So check it out now on YouTube.
Yeah.
and made an appearance on the show. I flew into Australia and then I flew back within 2 minutes. And my internet has just cut off.
Yeah, it's gone a little flaky here too. And there he is.
Am I back
There he
again?
is.
Can you hear
You're
me?
back again. Yep. I mean, you got to keep in mind that I'm here in Alabama, and we have a bunch of little chipmunks that are turning a bunch of little turbines, and that's what keeps the internet going in Alabama. It's a very unreliable
Okay.
thing. Yeah. Do we have you? Are you there,
Yeah.
Martin?
Can you hear me?
Okay. There we go. We got him. All right. Well, we're gonna close up shop here. We're gonna be around in post show for those that would like to join us for post show. Martin's going to be along for another 90 seconds in post show. Please, Martin, 90 seconds, and we'll post this show up to YouTube. So if you missed it, if you missed the beginning, you can go back later and watch it all. But Martin, thank you so much for taking the time to come on today. And it's just been a treat having you here. And, you know, on behalf of all the folks in the chat room, thank you. And, you know, the bad thing about you doing as well as you do is that it just raises expectations so much higher for the future.
See if I can have a lightning round, answer as many as possible. So let's see what we can do.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom, for having me. It's been
All
great.
right. If you're watching live, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And we are out. Great show, Martin. Thank you. Man, that was awesome. That was awesome.
Was I rambling a bit? Because how did it end up being an hour long? I feel like I said hardly anything.
Because you were having fun, I think. And the folks in the chat room were having fun. And I looked at the clock and I was like, oh man, we've gone 40 minutes and I feel like we're still in the introduction phase. So, you know, it is what it is. But thank you. You're most generous, and the folks obviously had a great time. In vMix. Let's see if that did it. Nope, that didn't do it. 1 second. There he is. Did that do it? Martin, are you there? Yeah.
I am
there he is.
here.
He's not the right size, but that's close enough for what we're doing. Okay. Not sure. I've been battling with the internet people since May. And they say that there's a bad line about underground cable somewhere. And they can't get the city to give them a permit to release it. To replace it. And I think that's a bunch of hooey. But anyway, I think we've lost Martin again.
And we're down again. And I'm back again.
And back again. All right, good. Because the frozen shot of you was not a good look. You know how you get caught in those funny. Yeah, exactly. All right.
That's what I was going to play this for.
Yeah, we can all do that. Okay. So Tim's probably watching. No, Tim's not watching. Tim's asleep. He's not with us yet. So anything that you've seen in the chat that you felt compelled to respond to before we go?
So it's a lightning round.
Yeah.
There were so many comments in the chat. I can't hardly get through them all.
Well, these folks are not bashful.
And it keeps scrolling. That old bug.
Yeah, there's a gear icon in the bottom right-hand corner, and if you click that, and you can uncheck scroll to latest message, and that'll keep it from automatically scrolling back again when somebody posts a comment.
I don't have a gear on mine.
Oh, really? I'm sorry.
um, mm,
Well, maybe I'm the only one with the gear. I think so. No, somebody in the chat room told me about the gear. Well, I can scroll back. Let's see. Somebody says, can you repeat the last hour? Yeah, sure, no problem. Oh, that's Rich. Rich is going to be our guest in 2 weeks. Rich does the jet ski races, and he's the one that had like 50 million views of one of his YouTube videos. With vMix, of course. Guest 934 asks if you've thought about giving away vMix Rubik's Cubes. That would be interesting.
The answer to that is that would be amazing, but, you know, the Rubik's Cube is expensive to license, so...
Yeah, well, you could just do one.
But I was thinking, like, as a cool giveaway at a show or something, that would... But yeah, because then we could have one side blue, one side green, one side orange. Don't know what you do with the other sides.
More blue. Yeah. Brian Daly is asking if vMix will ever have live stream available as a CDN.
If you're a live stream customer, keep telling them you want vMix to support it. It's entirely up to them. We can't do it on our end. They need to allow us. So keep asking them. We've asked them and they've said it's policy not to allow other programs or equipment to stream to them. They want to be a closed ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, why live stream anyway? There are so many stream providers to choose from. Why stick with them?
I think it was a client required that they use live stream. Yeah. Jared has a comment. He said that his co-producer had a choice between a TriCaster XD855 and their usual vMix kit for a dual live stream event, and he couldn't tear her away from the vMix, that she preferred that over the TriCaster. That's pretty cool. Giles says, can we export multi-views? I'm not sure what that means. Maybe as a external. Let's see if there's another part of that question somewhere else. John's wife says, I haven't been able to produce with vMix yet. I need to fight off 3 other guys for the computer. Even our professional producer friends are impressed with vMix. They're used to using hardware. Will multi-quarter support .html recording? XML.
What recording?
XML.
XML recording.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Not at this stage. It's harder than it looks. What they're talking about is there's an XML format that you can specify camera cuts and transitions, and you can import it into Premiere. So you can get all the multi-quarter video clips, and it will automatically cut them up the way you did in the production. It's a tricky thing to do without Genlock on all the sources.
I'm going to copy and paste some of these questions so they should appear at the bottom of your view. Let's try that.
So is there a way to slow down the PTZ speed on virtual camera input on a PTZ optics camera? Try out the vMix 18 beta. There is a new drag control in the settings when you set up your PTZ provider that can specify the speed. Now that's just the pan and tilt speed. It's not possible, as far as I know, to control the zoom speed via the API at this time. So, but I added that into 18. Also works for the Panasonic cameras.
I noticed that. That's really cool. I've enjoyed using that.
The reason for Mordecai is to be able to use a tiny wireless keyboard as a controller. Ah, okay. And when NDI2 is employed, will I be able to connect with other devices across our school district campus from one venue to another over a Cisco backbone? Okay, so this is where we're getting into some of the fancier technical stuff in NDI version 2. In summary, if you install the NDI version 2 tools when they're made available, there is software in there that allows you to add a remote network IP address into the list that vMix looks at when looking for an NDI source. So as long as you have plenty of bandwidth, you need at least 100, 125 megabit per HD source. Between those two networks, you can add IP addresses of computers manually. And so that'll help you connect to cross-subnet sources.
All right.
Now, RMC260 working with vMix.
That's a control surface, data, data view, data max, data something.
RMC260, what is that? Oh, okay. Well, it's certainly a really affordable control surface, so and it has serial control, so it would certainly be possible. I'll have to take a look at that at some point. And Tom's asking, are you a one-man dev crew? So as far as the vMix software itself is concerned, we have other staff that do all sorts of stuff like our website programming and things like that. But yes, I'm the sole programmer. So somebody pointed out in the chat room, I saw the question before, that there were, well, isn't that a limitation? And I would say, I don't know, it's up to you to decide. Have a look at what the other software solutions out there are doing. How fast are they adding features? They have big teams at their disposal and they seem to work slower. So I have never worked in a programming team, so I can't say from experience whether that's true. My instinct is, if you're a big team of developers, you gain the advantage of, you know, some of them can go on holidays while you're still working on the software, you know. You can shuffle around, you can add new people to the team for some features and things like that. But I don't think it means faster development. That's just my instinct on that.
Well, I can tell you, having watched Wirecast, that getting an update out of Wirecast is just like watching a glacier. They don't move very quickly. Okay, I think I've got most of the questions. You may want to just sort of pick and choose the ones that you're comfortable answering. Yeah,
so some people are asking, well, you know, how big vMix is, how many licenses have been sold. I'll say how big the company is. We're a small company. Small company, as people know, based in Australia. We have 5 employees. So we're small, but we work efficiently. We're always thinking of ways to streamline and automate everything we do, even, to how can we, just talking to Tom, I'm hoping Tom can come by for NAB next year to help us out. Because we have a small team, we want everybody on deck for NAB, so we get our resellers, we get our partners to come by the booth and help us out. So we do things like that. We work, I don't even, there's a phrase that has dropped off my head, but there's a way that you can work efficiently with what you have to get the best out of it. And I think we do that very well as a small company. 2 Sinclairs is just too much bandwidth. Yeah, that's what's happened. We've overloaded the internet.
All right, I think golly, there are a lot of comments today. These guys are just really chatty. Okay. Here's an interesting question. This is from Kent Kowalski. Kent sent me the error message on this, and somebody's just having trouble getting vMix to run on their PC. Let's see if Kent's still here. I don't see him on the list. Yeah, Kent's still here, but sometimes he has to. he watches during his work, so sometimes he actually has to do some work. But the error message appears to be, it's a vMix black box, but it appears to be a Windows message. I'll send you the email that that I sent to him. That's got the error message in it. Maybe we can get those folks straightened out. I think they turned off some Windows services or something, and now it won't run an exe program.
Yeah, there's a number of reasons for not registering. So yeah, the specific error message should be able to solve that pretty quickly. Some common ones I've seen is some older Windows installations where things in Windows are just a little bit broken and it can't access what it needs to find out some information about the system. Because when you install a license, it ties it to the system. If it can't find out information about the system, it might get stuck. That's usually what happens. Unfortunately, in those cases, you might just have to bite the bullet and reinstall Windows. Mm-hmm. Sometimes uninstalling the latest Windows updates kicks Windows back into working mode. But it's mainly older systems where this is, my recommendation to people out there. If you see software out there that claims to make Windows faster, don't install it. It's a disaster. It will delete random things. It'll delete stuff in vMix. It'll clean the registry by deleting half the things that vMix needs. Never a good idea, those software. Good thing about Windows 10 is there's a refresh system option now. So if your system's feeling a bit sluggish and you want to go back to when you just installed it, there's a refresh option. But don't install those tools that advertise they're going to make your Windows faster. They will just make it worse. Do you have any solution for Skype to connect with vMix after Skype update? So we fixed that in the latest version of 17. So I believe 0.113. And also all the vMix 18 betas fixed that as well. So give them a go. So a couple more questions in there. Somebody's asked, why did you choose SlimDX? It was the only .NET Direct 3D library at the time. It also works really well. Never had any problems with using SlimDX. Why does the NDI screen capture in vMix drop frames? It depends on the source computer. A lot has gone into making the desktop capture a lot faster in Windows. But usually it's graphics limitations. If you're trying to capture a screen on an old laptop, it may not get up to the full 30 frames a second. You can also set the frame rate in the NDI. So if you're in Europe and you're at 25 frames a second production, change the desktop capture to 25. It probably will look a bit smoother. Yeah, if you're capturing on the same computer, use the local desktop capture. Don't use NDI. It just would be using up CPU that way. Any more questions you can see?
No, but I we could stay here until I finished my lemonade, and we would still be answering questions. Giles, I think there's a NDI from NewTek that works under Linux. You may want to check that. Okay, Martin, let's call it a day. And anybody that's still got a question, come back next week when Martin's not here, and we'll make up answers. If Martin were here, he would say no, but I'll say yes. Of course, we can do that. Yes, there we go. Well, thanks for those of you that have hung around to the very end. Martin, anything that you want to pop out on here before we close out?
No, somebody was just mentioning about an activation issue out in the field when they didn't have internet access, where it suddenly required them to activate. It will only require to activate if the system is changed in a substantial way. What I mean by that is the CPU was changed, the memory was changed, or the processor, or CPU memory or hard disk is changed. It won't change if you just swap out capture cards or things like that by design, because you may need to swap them out if something goes wrong. But the main system, if you're doing a main surgery on your computer, it's probably going to need to be reactivated, but that's unlikely to happen out there in the road. What they can do, if they drop us an email after they've activated it up again, I can tell you what the difference was between the two, so I can pinpoint which component was changed. But I'm very mindful of that to make sure that it doesn't suddenly activate. That is interesting. I haven't heard any reports of that happening in a long, long time after I solved a lot of those things that Windows might do. But yeah, drop us an email. Who was that was asking that? David, yeah, feel free to drop us an email. Email us your product key and we'll be able to investigate and make sure it doesn't happen again.
There you go. Oh, I have one last question, Martin. When something happens and I get an error message in vMix and it says send error report, does that go to the North Pole, or what actually happens with that error report? I mean,
so those error reports, yeah, go to a big queue in our system. So when I'm looking to fix bugs in 18, I look through and see what error reports were sent through. But mainly it's sent through for support requests. Somebody will email us and saying, hey, my computer is playing up and vMix is not working. We tell them, send us a support report. We can look that up and go, oh, you've got... So the support report has vMix preset, the vMix settings, CPU and graphics card you have, and any errors that you've had recently. So it's sort of a catch-all. So we can look through, oh, you've had this error, you've got this graphics card. It helps us to pinpoint things very, very easily, because we only added that since version 16, and it's just made it so, talking about it as well, making our office work a lot faster. Now we can pinpoint, oh, instead of having to do a follow-up question, oh, what graphics card do you have? We now know you've got this graphics card, you need to upgrade it, or these are the settings you need to change. It's been really helpful for support. Yeah, just go on a big list that I have that I can look through, and I can search by product key and find the reports that people have sent through.
Well, don't look ones on my product key because there are probably a bunch of them. Probably all the same ones where it's like, I've tried it 6 times the same way and it still doesn't work. That's because I'm an idiot. I ought to have a show by that name. Okay. All right. My friend, you've been very gracious. I appreciate it a whole heck of a lot. And we're going to send a tweet to Tim right now and tell him to wake up, get to work. None of this lollygagging around out there. And if there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. But I'll be bugging you about something else soon enough.
So yeah, it's been fun. Thanks guys. So many people in the chat room. I just wish we were able to answer all of the questions. It's fun. But as always, join us on the forums, Twitter, all of that sort of stuff. I'm happy to help out where we can. Thanks, guys.
All right, folks. I'm going to let this run a little bit so that you guys can, if you've buffered for a while, you will have something. Let's see. What are we going to put up here? Oh, I know. Why don't we give you some fish in the fish tank under the desktop, and we'll let that run for a little while. And Martin, I'm going to cut you loose here. But thank you again.
Thanks, Tom. See you later.
I will see you later.